This is Retro Screamers, and I'm here today with Wally Burr, the original director and caster for Transformers, G.I. Joe, and many other 80s cartoons you may remember. Wally, would you like to say hello to the fans?
Yeah, hi there, out there. I want to say one thing. You introduced me as the director. I was not the director of the original TV. I was the director of the voices. And I was the director of the voices in the first animated feature.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I was not the director of the whole project. I was the director of a part of it. So I just like to distinguish that so somebody doesn't say, what's he talking about? So, getting that straight, hi, and glad to be here. How are you, Rosemary?
I'm good. I want the fans to know a little bit more about what you've done, and I would like to start off with some of your early assignments, like your TV commercials that you had done.
Well, during the Korean War, I was at Fort Knox, Kentucky, in the Army. I was a captain teaching tank gunnery. And somebody said, hey, you had some broadcast experience. And I had. I'd gone to Northwestern, and I had been a program director and an announcer in radio. And they said, well, we want you to do some announcing on this TV show we're doing. It's a GI talent show. So anyhow, in the process of doing that, I realized back then that was with live TV. There was no tape. So everything you did was live. The mistakes and the good things, everything were all combined. And I said, boy, when I get out of the service, I am going to learn about film because there's too many goofs in live TV. So I did. I went back to Chicago and went to a studio applying for a job as an assistant director or production assistant or whatever. And they said, well, you're not experienced enough now, but if you'd like to work in our film laboratory, I'll let you do that. So I said, okay. Does that mean I might be able to get into the studio? And they said, if you keep your nose clean and work hard and seem to be able to do the job, as soon as we can, we'll bring you into the studio. And they did that, and I became an assistant director. And after a couple of years, the director that was our main guy was hired away, and I was offered the job as a commercial director. And I started doing commercials for Johnson's Wax and Motorola and Oscar Mayer and all sorts of products that were produced by Chicago advertising agencies. So that's how I got into the film business. And sometimes I wish I'd stayed in the live video business because there a director has so many things to do at once, and it's a very strong teaching background. You're really the editor when you're directing TV. You're lining up the titles that are going to appear on the screen. You're lining up the music that's about to come up. You're doing about 16 things at once. You are a real multitasker. So it's a great teaching ground, and I kind of wish I had stayed in that live TV end of it. In film, it's a little bit simpler. You're kind of only dealing with the camera and the one shot you're doing right now. But in live TV, you're thinking about 16 different things at once, and it's just a very strong training ground. You understand what I'm getting at?
Oh, yeah. Keeps you much busier.
But I did go into film, and that led to people I was working with liked what I was doing, and I went with a large advertising agency in Chicago called Leo Burnett, and it's still in business. They had, the time I was with them, we were doing the Marlboro commercials, we were doing Pillsbury, we were doing Green Giant, we were doing Charlie the Tuna. I was the guy who cast the actor, Herschel Bernardi, who became Charlie the Tuna. And so that's how I got into the advertising business. And kind of behind that all, I'm saying, but I want to get into entertainment as opposed to commercials. Commercials are great. Entertainment, a great training program for doing entertainment because you've got to tell a story. Excuse me. you have to tell a story in 60 seconds or 30 seconds now. So you got to be able to compress things and make things work in a very small form. And it's a good training ground for making movies because you have to plan. Excuse me. It's a little bit morning-y out here.
I can
you have to be able to plan ahead and do very detailed work in terms of your preparation for your shooting when you're doing commercials, because there isn't going to be an opportunity to come back the next day sometimes and fix what you screwed up on the day before.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I did get into commercials and then wanted to go into entertainment. So I got out on the West Coast. I was moved from Chicago by Leo Burnett to Los Angeles and started making some commercials with Hanna-Barbera that we were using for characters for Kellogg's in most cases. We had a number of characters that Hanna-Barbera animated for our characters for commercials for Kellogg's. Sugar Pops Pete, and most people would remember a lot of those animals, good characters that appeared in Kellogg commercials. I worked on a lot of those. It was all animation, and Bill Hanna had seen me work with actors in the recording studio and liked what I did. So he said, why don't you start a commercial department here at Hanna-Barbera? And that got me into a company that was doing some entertainment, or rather a lot of entertainment and some commercials. So that's how I got out of Chicago and kind of out of the commercial end of it. And I was not great at running a commercial division. Directing was okay, but I was also responsible for selling our capability at Hanna-Barbera to make commercials. And I found it very, very tough to sell advertising agencies on making commercials with Hanna-Barbera. They felt that they'd all look like Fred Flintstone or some of the Smurfs or characters like that, and didn't realize that animators are capable of doing a number of things and that we could do practically any kind of animation that was necessary. But I found it very difficult to persuade advertising agency art directors and advertising agency creative directors that we were capable of doing perhaps the more sensitive, the more different-looking stuff than Hanna-Barbera was doing. So eventually I said to Bill Hanna, let me do voice recording. You've seen me do it before and so on. And he said, okay, so I started doing that. And I got into what I had been hoping for some time, getting into just the straight entertainment end of television. And I voice directed a whole slew of different shows at Hanna-Barbera. And that's how I got started in the business. Got out of live TV saying it's terrible, it's mistaken, full of mistakes, and got into film work and got to the West Coast. There, back to you.
Okay, that was